Kevin, welcome to the Inevitable Podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Pedro.
Yes,
it's awesome to see you.
Just really excited to record this episode, and for all of our listeners now, which did you know we already have listeners in over 35 countries, which is incredible. I'm
not surprised. That's amazing.
Did not expect that. So just wanted to say a shout out to everyone that has been supporting us. And even though we are a niche content in English, in Brazil, we're the 5th podcast in entrepreneurship already. I've only been with like 5 episodes and that have been released. So that's pretty cool. So
it's the power of your platform.
No, it's the ability of having inevitable people like you in my life. That's the beauty of it. But
thank you.
So for those that don't know, Kevin is a personal friend, a brother at this point. It's the and we met when we were working together at FundersClub. Kevin is by far the most determined person that I have ever met. There are very few people, it is true, and there are very few people that I am confident that can out-hustle me. Kevin is absolutely one of them. And has a social mission to accelerate human progression through the Maslow hierarchy of needs. That's beautiful. And currently focusing on improving people's health by democratizing access to nutritious and delicious food through Immi. It's this food brand that has been working on for the past 2 years. Immi is backed by investors and advisors, including Collaborative Fund, Siddhi Capital, Pear Ventures, ONEVC, and also the co-founders of Caviar, Thrive Market, Magic Spoon, Kettle Fire The Hustle, Twitch, and Casper. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks so much for having me again, man. I think it's so nice to see you too, because the last time I saw you, you were at our place. You were in San Francisco. We had a nice dinner, and it was the night before you were moving to Miami. So to see you sitting in your chair, this nice microphone setup, makes me very happy. It's good to see that you're happy in Miami, man.
I am. It's awesome. I'll be back in August, so we'll see each other. And,
nice.
And for those that don't know, if you ever need a good strategy on how to get a roommate, Kevin has the best one, because his roommate is like a Michelin star chef.
He's amazing. Yeah. I'm glad you had a chance to try his cooking.
I was so impressed that my concept with restaurants is usually I only like to pay for food that I can't make, but I've never had that level of quality at someone else's home. That it wasn't like a hired chef. It was just he was just
a friend.
He's a friend. Yeah. And for him, it wasn't difficult. It was just hanging out.
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
So
he does this for fun. So it's amazing. We eat like kings and queens. So it's awesome.
So Kevin, I always like to start with a story, right? Basically, and you are a second generation immigrant. Your parents came from Taiwan. And a lot of the things that make you great, for me at least as a Brazilian immigrant in the U.S., once I start learning about Asian culture, I just think this, like you have some of the most interesting embodiments of the hardworking, focused Asian family. And I want to start off with a point, and then you tell me how your story of your parents, how you grew up, how you guys came to America, but. I remember once you posted a picture years ago on Instagram about the fact that your parents were reutilizing paper cups from McDonald's as vases to store plants. Remember that?
It's a common, I think a lot of Asian families, we try to reuse everything. So, we keep all the grocery bags when we go to the groceries. Things like McDonald's cups. It's a common, I would say, Asian immigrant family like story. And it's funny because as a child, especially growing up in America, sometimes you think of it as like, oh, wow, that's embarrassing. But now you come to realize, like, my God, I'm so proud they did that. The values it instilled in me, and, seeing them just, learn how to use all their resources possible. I don't think that's anything to laugh at or be embarrassed by. Fortunately, they've instilled a very different kind of mindset in me now, where it's not necessarily necessarily about like saving $3 on a cup of coffee, but it's about how can I earn another $3. But I think that kind of mindset would only be possible standing on their shoulders.
No, that's incredible. I think that once we become adults and we realize the type of sacrifices that our parents have made for us, I mean, it just made me. I already loved, them, specifically my mom and my stepdad. And it's just it's crazy, right? I mean, we are the luckiest generation. It's like life is never easy, but we got it. We're just so fortunate,
Mm-hmm.
But before you started in tech, right? Because you didn't follow the traditional, hey, become a doctor or a lawyer, Asian track, right?
I almost did, but yeah.
It's just like, hey, my son is the ramen man. Now.
They're so proud now.
Yeah, well, it's fun. It's fucking awesome.
It was.
But before starting tech, you decided to go to investment banking, right? So you work at Merrill Lynch for a little bit. How was that like? Because you grew up in California and you went to Berkeley, right? So maybe we can start there.
Yeah, my parents immigrated here from Taiwan. One thing a lot of kind of Asian immigrants do is they'll leave their children back with the grandparents back in their home country. So I spent about 6 months living with my grandparents back home in Taiwan. Then they brought me back here. So English was not my first language, but learned it from a lot of like the babysitters and kind of over time in primary school. But I think I was very, very fortunate. I think they had obviously no money like most immigrants, but they worked very hard to provide a great education for me. That was the number one focus. And so luckily, had an excellent education growing up. Went to a really great public high school and made my way towards Berkeley. And there I knew I wanted to study some kind of business and do something in the business world. And a lot of my peers at the time were entering investment banking. So it's not like it's anything, surprising, I guess, from like a typical career path. But the bank I joined, it was Merrill Lynch. It was their tech banking practice. So my hope was that by being in Palo Alto next to all of like tech at the time, that was still a lot of tech going on around there before it migrated to San Francisco. I thought I would absorb a lot of that. And so even though I was working those long, 80 to 100 hour work weeks, on nights and weekends, I would walk to the Stanford campus and I would knock on all of the labs. At the time I was really interested in education tech. I would knock on the ed tech lab. Just say, hey, I'm not a student here, but I'm so fascinated with what you guys are doing. Can I get a tour of the lab? And, they're not going to say no to someone who's that excited. And so I would get to go visit and tour, talk to the professors, the students. And after 8 months, I was, working that finance role. I kind of was just like, wow, I kind of, I'm addicted to the technology industry and learning how to build things. And I really want to work in this industry. And so that's when I started really looking into different roles.
Nice. No, this is great, and I think that what was the thing going in the back of your mind? Because I would say, I think you and I both understand what it's like to grow up with not growing up with like extreme poverty, but like just having limited choices due to financial caps, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so, maybe you say, I want to do IB when I'm young because, I'm still super young. I haven't lived enough, but I know that like that, at least, I'll make money, right? Like I will get.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the thing that you realized that, because you have to be, determined and creative in order to say, yes, I'm going to just walk around and knock on people's doors. So what were you thinking? And when you actually, when you get into one of those labs, what do you say to them, or how do you add value? Because I think there's a very, very valuable lesson there for all the people out there listening to us. If you're part of the pick your brain, buy a cup of coffee community, understand that like no one gives a shit. Like you need to actually add more value than what you can capture and be a nice person, and then things happen to you, right? So maybe Like,
Definitely.
right. What were you thinking when you were like knocking on those doors at Stanford?
I think a lot of, the first thing was, I think especially when you grow up as, so for myself, only child, I think, it's
So
like,
am I. Yeah.
exactly. We know. So, when you're only child, your parents are immigrants, they're new to America. They don't, English is not their first language. They're figuring things out just as much as you are. And, just because I was an only child, I didn't really have a social network. We had no social capital, no financial capital. And so the only way to break through is to be able to ask for help, right? And so letting go of your ego and just being like, look, I don't know anything, but can I knock on the door, be as hungry as possible, and say like, look, I don't know about this industry. I'm not from this industry, but I come from the finance world. If there's any work that can be done, on the finance side, I can help provide that. And so, like at Stanford at the time, there was an education tech lab. It was a lot of students who were just working on, I don't know if they were thesis projects, but there were different like stations, and each person was working on a different thing. I didn't feel like, I felt like it was okay to just knock on the door and tell them, look, I'm not on Stanford's campus, but I'm just this hungry person who is very passionate about this industry. And like, I had obviously done a lot of research on my own time. And so when I talked to them, they weren't like, oh, he's not like an idiot. Like, he knows the lingo. He studied the industry. He's name dropping all these competitors. Clearly he's not like, he's not here to pick my brain, right? I want to think of him as a peer in a way. And so that's probably how I kind of bought in, a lot of these people to letting me into the labs. And then, use any resource you can. At the time I used Quora, so I was reading a lot of Quora, reading other people's answers, and that's kind of how I got smart on different industries very quickly. It was also the only social network that wasn't banned at my investment bank. So,
yeah, because that's funny.
They didn't know about it.
Exactly. That's probably why. But it's funny. We'll get you FundersClub. We'll talk about that also in terms of like how we got our jobs there. But that's the lesson. And sometimes I think people, I don't know if it's just a limitation on mental models that they just don't understand that for you to get what you want, you have to, get to that level before you get the reward. That's kind of like almost like a universal law or like some sort of like life code. And sometimes people feel like they just, they deserve it, or the world owns them something. And it's the opposite. It's like you deliver first and then you get it.
Exactly.
But typically, right, you get it with some sort of compounding as well because you put the effort. It's, anyway.
Definitely. You don't want, like when you hold like a mentor or some kind of idol in your mind, I think what you have to do is you have to push to be a peer, right? You can't push to approach them and be like, oh, like, it's great to like show that like, hey, I followed you for years, but if they always think of you as someone who's just a follower, they won't treat you like a peer. And I think ideally is like, you want to be their friend, you want to be able to provide value back and forth. And I think that's when you, partially it's like earn respect, but it's also show respect to them, right? They're taking their time. And so I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And make it easy for them to say yes. I think that's the other thing because, I think you and I, we cold email a lot, and usually for people that are more powerful, more knowledgeable and wealthier than we are. So you need to just have enough empathy and humility to put yourself in the shoes of the other person, rather someone that's on, like could be someone on the Stanford lab, or, maybe, I'm trying to raise money from a specific investor, or you're trying to close a deal with Immi, and just having the understanding of like, how can I make the other side's life better is the sophisticated way of, hustling with integrity, basically, because, just to use the venture getting a job in venture, which we'll get there, example, probably with, when we were together at FundersClub, or Pear and me with, ONEVC, and now Atman, every week I get all these stupid emails about like, oh, can I grab a coffee? I'd love to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. It's like, no one has time for fucking coffee because we're all busy. But like, if you send an email and say, hey, I wrote an investment memo for this unique thesis that I have. Could you give me feedback? I'm like, yes, of course I will. Right.
Yeah.
Or, there's a unique thing. Or, I mean, the worst is when I used to even invest time responding sometimes to people like that.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, can you provide me a unique investment idea, or write a memo? And they say, you should invest in DoorDash or Airbnb. I was like, oh, great.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks for nothing. We appreciate your time. But the beauty of it is that there are a lot more people. I would like to, I'm very positive in that sense. That I think that there was this kid that got a job. It's like an 18-year-old got a job at Lux Capital. I read an article on Business Insider. He's 18. He was interviewing Josh Wolf for a book that he was writing on his own thesis of hard sciences, and then they just created a job for him.
Wow,
because they were just
that's impressive.
Right, but that's how you want to play life, right? That's the game of life.
Definitely.
So hopefully more people listening here understand that. But because everyone can be successful, you just need to understand how you play. Like, what game do you want to play? You can't be Michael Jordan playing baseball. You want to play basketball.
Definitely.
So it's like you were in IB, and then your transition to tech was when you started doing product at Kabam, right?
Yeah. So it was the first company I actually tried to interview for was actually the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Oh, no way.
On their education team. And I got pretty far in the process, but they said, look, you need some more operating experience. Someone else came in who has like 30 years of operating experience. And at the time, one of our bank's clients was this company called Kabam. It was a mobile gaming company at kind of the heyday of the mobile gaming rise. All the co-founders were from Berkeley. I actually, in fact, had a couple kind of like people, I wouldn't call them colleagues, but like classmates in Berkeley. I didn't know them that well who were already working there. And I keep saying my co-founder because him and I met there, but we'll talk about that later. I had grown up playing games. It was like a familiar industry to me, and I just wanted to learn more about product management and basically building product. And so interviewed at that company and was very lucky to get an offer. And so 8 months into my investment banking job, this is actually a funny story. I would not recommend anyone do this, but there was a painting on a wall that every single day when I walked inside the bank, I had to walk up a flight of stairs, and there was a painting at the top of the stairs. This beautiful forest, very peaceful. And I remember the first day I walked in that investment bank, I told everyone in the cubicles, I said, the day I'm leaving this place, I'm taking that painting with me. The day I quit, after I left my BlackBerry, my ID card, I walked to the painting, I took it off the wall, and I walked backwards. I would never recommend this, guys. This is borderline theft, but I'll tell you guys why it's okay later. So I walked backwards so the security cameras wouldn't see me. I put it in the trunk of my car and I drove to San Francisco.
Amazing.
And it was kind of, I still have it. It's in my living room.
Nice.
Years later, I talked to a VP of the bank and I told him
now I know exactly where you have it in your living room. Oh, that's the bank. All right.
And actually, it's a funny story because later at FundersClub, I got called out on it during the interview process. But why that painting is so special is kind of did you ever watch Goodwill Hunting?
They knew that, because I interviewed you as well, but I had no idea about this. They found out about this thing when we were interviewing.
I think I told Boris and Alex somehow the interview question came up, and I told them, and Alex later called me and he was like, "Hey, we really like you, but there was one thing that we all got hung up on, you took this painting that's theft." And I said, look, I understand. I went back to the bank actually, and I talked to a VP and I told him what I had done, and the VP said, "Don't worry about it, keep it." That kind of gave me the permission, but I was prepared to give it back years later if I had to.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, so this is my...
what was going on in your mind at that time to just say, I want to, I'm going to bring the forest home?
So it wasn't, this is going to sound dumb, but it actually wasn't just a personal thing. So when I started at that investment bank, I had 4 colleagues who were my year. I also had a few friends who were a year above me. So that analyst cubicle area had maybe 8 people total. And I don't know if you ever watched Goodwill Hunting. Pedro, have you watched that movie?
I have
It's
not.
a movie where this guy he's like a genius. He's like a hidden genius, but he decides to work in construction with his like childhood friends. And every day his childhood friend drives to his house to pick him up and take him to the construction site. But his childhood best friend said, you know, my dream is that one day I come here, I knock on your door, and you're not here because you're a genius. You have to move on to like bigger and better things. You're not taking, you know, you're not owning your destiny in a way. And so, you know, the main character, you know, he decides to leave, and one day his best friend comes in, knocks, and he's no longer there, and his best friend smiles and just drives to the construction site alone. And my hope at the time was, the reason I said I want to take that painting is because a lot of my coworkers, I knew they were unhappy. I felt it. I knew they were not living their best selves. They were kind of doing it maybe perhaps for the money. And I told them that one day I'm going to take that painting and it's going to be my Goodwill Hunting moment. I want you to walk up those stairs and see a blank space where that painting is and know that I have gone on to do things, and I want to motivate you to look at that space and go on to do great things yourselves. And that's exactly why I took that painting. And I knew because everyone saw that painting missing. And I hope that I motivated them to go on and graduate from that bank and do other, you know, big things with their lives. So
Wow, that's beautiful. Do you still keep in touch?
I do actually. Last week I just had coffee with, or breakfast actually, is one of my really good friends, Nick Kunj, and yeah, he's one of the ones. He's now probably going to be the youngest CFO at a company pretty soon. So the guy's done some amazing stuff.
That's great. I never understood the culture of investment banking. It's basically grab the smartest, most ambitious people that are naive enough to know that they're just going to be blood sucked and completely soulless for 2 years, and try to break their soul until, you know, some will realize, will like justify that what they do has any sort of meaning, which it really doesn't. You know, for me, like most bankers are just kind of like, frankly, like they're like the cockroaches of capitalism. You know, if there's a thermonuclear assault, like they'll survive. I fucking hate investment bankers, but so I can say that on the record because you know, most of them are horrible people, but the ones that are good people are incredible people. So of course, as a venture capital firm, you know, we are partners with, you know, all the leading investment banks, but I take my time getting to know the bankers because we have a lot of influence when people are going to make decisions with who they want to work with. And there are incredible people. So I have personal friends that are incredible bankers because they love the profession, but they love it from the human side. So they're not always optimizing for capital. They're always optimizing for being a good person and finding mutual long-term alignment. These people exist. Unfortunately, they are the exceptions because, you know, I don't think we have had ever a year in the history of Western civilization or global, you know, for what that matters, where you didn't have one of the top 4 largest investment banks with a single corruption scale. All of them had it. Right? We just had Credit Suisse with that hedge fund, and then, you know, Goldman comes with something else and more. So across the board, these are somewhat like these organizations are large, and there are a lot of bad people there, but not everyone is bad, and they play an important role in the world. But and I think it starts from how they you know, how you begin your careers there. Like it's literally like, we're going to crush your soul, and it's okay to, you know, work 90-hour days and 90-hour weeks. Sorry, and right, like
crazy.
It's really weird to me. But, you know, just so for the bankers listening, like I like you, the ones that are good people. But most of the bankers are not. That's all I'm going to say in that regard.
Get out, guys.
Yes, leave. But the ones that stay, then they end up being, you know, I have this personal friend, Bruno Stembaugh. He's actually a Merrill Lynch, Bank of America. Yeah, he loves it. And we had this conversation. He told me, I don't want to be the hero. I don't want to sail, you know, and burn the harbor and set off. I'm the guy when the wave for the server is about to hit. I got a jet ski right next to him, and I pump the accelerator, and I'm happy being the jet ski guy. I was like, this is a great metaphor.
I love that.
Anyway, so, you know, you started in tech, in product management at Kabam, and Kabam had a successful outcome, right? It became a big company, and then I was the story of Kabam. Yeah.
Yeah, they, I think the thing they did very well was they recognized back in the day that you cannot, the user acquisition was primarily driven off of Facebook, and all the mobile gaming companies were, light years ahead in performance marketing relative to every other industry. But Kabam quickly realized that, if you partner with Hollywood, so there's some of their investors were like, they would work with like Foxes and the Warner Brothers of the world. You can take IP from the Hollywood industry, make games using that IP. So they were the first to make like the really big Marvel games or like Fast and Furious, The Hobbit. And they use that franchise and it really lowers their acquisition costs. So Kabam had been highly profitable pretty much every single year. When I joined, it was around 300 employees. And, over the next 2 years, they scaled to 1,200 employees and then had an amazing outcome. The CEO used to be a former banker himself, and then he went to venture, and he was also a Berkeley grad. And he kind of realized that if he took Kabam and split it into a couple of different entities and sold all of them, he would get a higher enterprise value overall versus selling it as a single unit. It's not a common strategy that CEOs will employ, but after selling all three, I think he got basically like 1.2 billion, I think, in aggregate purchase price. So it was a very, very good outcome for everyone involved. But I think the most important thing was it was my first time being part of a hyper growth company. It's one of those strange moments where you look around every single week. There's new hire orientations. It looks like first day of school. It's
awesome, right?
The HR lead. You have like 20 people walking in a line, doing a little tour. You just, sometimes it's not as nice because you don't recognize every face, but it's just amazing to see that kind of growth.
Well, I think you and I experienced the same thing when I was at SendGrid, and this parallel thing. It's just when you look back to this date, the things I've learned there are so precious to help a bunch of founders and just be a better person. It's because I think what most people tend to overlook, and sometimes I think compounding hypergrowth seems like a normal thing because we are been in Silicon Valley for so long, but it's not normal. And no company operates that way. And then suddenly you're there for 3 months and you're a senior. You're senior because it's growing so fast.
Exactly.
It's like,
I think like you said, man, it's the opportunities are so abound that you raise your hand and you self-select and you're like, I think a couple months in, Kabam was seeing so much success in China that they opened this China office. And one day they called the entire PM org into this very small conference room. And they said, we want to select a group of you, almost like a strike force. Our VP at the time came from the military. And so he was very much like, act now, apologize later. He said, I want to organize a strike force. 5 people, you're going to go out to Kabam, China. Each one of you is going to start a new project. And maybe a few of you will survive, one of you will break out, but, you guys are going to save the second half year's annual revenue because we had targets that we need to hit. And I was young, I think I was 23 at the time, had no obligations. So I immediately rose my hand. I said, I'm going to China. And like within 2 weeks, they got our visas, they got our housing, and we were out there. It was insane. It was the fastest thing. And it was incredible because you see the growth that you get to experience China, a new office, and the product we worked on ended up becoming the largest product in the portfolio, and that was just my first experience, growing so quickly, really.
I think it's also the power of wanting to win and raising your hand, right? It's the parallel that I've had at like that for me at SendGrid, at least, because this week someone tweeted at me that's like, how dare you say that immigrants have a harder time than non-immigrants? I was like, no, I mean, are you retarded or what the fuck are you talking about? Like someone tweeted that at me this week. Jeez. I was shocked, and is an immigrant as well, which is even more shocking. Completely, I mean, I don't know. Maybe people just some folks might exaggerate on microdosing or something like that. I don't know, but no. My point is that I had a lot of challenges getting the job at SendGrid to the point that I had to bend the system by still following the rules. But I had to go to 3 different departments at Colorado, like CU, where I was doing my master's, to get a specific signature, so I could be a semi unpaid, or poorly paid. So not unpaid, poorly paid intern that could only work for 4 hours a week. That I had to do this whole thing, because basically to get the J1 visa that I had, you had to be sponsored by a company that was willing to, do cultural exchanges with you. So I actually then I was like, where am I going to convince someone to give me a job that I'm going to quit immediately to go study abroad? Right. So fortunately, I worked for 2 months for my mom. At her tiny video production company, got this letter, and then it all worked out. She fired me, so yeah, my mom fired me, but it was the whole
good story.
It was the whole plan anyway. I came to America, and through the termination got that letter, and the letter was basically the head of HR at the time said, okay, we really like you. We're going to wait until your H-1B comes out and your visa. So, but in the meantime, as you wait, it's important that you only work for 4 hours, not a week, sorry, for 4 hours a day. Or it was a ridiculous, easy amount of commitments. I do think it was somewhere along 4 hours a week. It was I don't know who made that rule, but it was all perfectly legal. And then I was like, yeah, okay, of course, no problem. The next day I showed up at the office at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I was working. I was pounding 14-hour days.
Jeez.
And doing exactly what you said. There was it's interesting how this is why there is a beautiful, incredible God, because what are the odds of you I read this book that was a perfect book for that time, right? Is this book from Seth Godin called The Dip. It's a really tiny book. It's 45 pages, but when he talks about the concept of the dip, is that you need to push so hard or create a dip so deep that you become indispensable, right? They cannot let you go or cannot fire you because you have so many plates on you. There's so many responsibilities that you need to be irreplaceable. I mean, you can't replace everyone. No one is but there are specific moments in hyper growth where you might be the only person holding that one screw, and you put it out, the whole thing collapses.
Exactly.
So my mind, I was like, all right, I got to get my hands here, the other hand there. So I started I wasn't asking for permission. I was grabbing more and more and more projects. And then suddenly, when my visa was not approved, because I got into the H-1B cap, but the visa was declined. And then the VP asked me, I was like, oh, but as that moment where they were going to decide, all right, are we going to let the Pedro kid just come back to Brazil and, fuck it, whatever, you had your shot, or are we going to keep him?
Wow.
And then, I walked into her office crying, and to talk to her and the CEO. And I said, look, I really want to stay in America. She's like, what are you working on? And then I gave this insane list. She's like, what? You're doing all of that? We cannot, we can't let you go. So the CEO said, all right, we're going to file. I'm very grateful for Jim Franklin and Denise Hulse at SendGrid. And they both like, we're going to fight, to appeal this decision, but you have to move back to Brazil. We'll hire you as a consultant, maybe start expanding us in LATAM. But it goes to show the story about what you're talking about. It's just you're in that meeting, and it's who wants to go to China? And you raise your hand, and you're like, I want to go. So when you join the right startup, just join the rocket ship. Just make sure you have a seat and be unapologetic about it. And just brute force hustle your way into your education, because that's what happened to me, at least, right? I mean, 4 different positions at SendGrid in 4 years. So I learned tremendously. I was promoted 3 times. I mean, you go through, I like to say, went through 3 cycles of hard things about hard things,
Yes, definitely.
But
that's amazing, man. I didn't know that story, actually.
Oh, that's okay. That's a new one. But yeah, and so you left Kabam, but you were still in, continue. You wanted to continue to be in product management, and then you joined alt school, right?
Yes. So I never really let go of my love of education, and so my final role at Kabam, Kabam basically acquired another 50-person company here in San Francisco, and so me and my now co-founder, we were coworkers at the time. We actually went over to basically lead the transition of that company into Kabam. And
when you guys met, did you have any idea that K Chan was going to be your co-founder?
So when I met him, so it's funny because when I started at Kabam, he had been there for a year already, and we were on the same team. So technically, he wasn't really my manager. He was my senior on the team. And then we had a manager, this really smart HBS grad named John. And so me and K-Chan were kind of peers in a way, but he was definitely more senior to me. The funny thing was, I think when we started, we really didn't like each other. And I'll tell you why. We have very opposite working styles. He is very much like, he can go heads down, go from like 0 to 1, could do everything himself. He's brilliant, very like strong, deep worker. And you give him a nebulous problem, he'll figure it out. Me, if you give me a problem, I'm a very like network driven person. So the first thing I do is I go talk to people who've been in these positions, who've done this before. I want to understand what are different perspectives, what are different approaches that people have taken. And then once I triangulate, then I kind of go figure it out. So at the time, I think both of us probably thought, like, man, your style is it's so different that it's almost like annoying. Like, yeah, I bet in his mind, he was thinking, man, Kaylee, why are you talking so much? Why do you talk to so many people? Like, just do the work, like, shut up and do the work. And in my mind, I was probably thinking, man, K-Chen, like, are you sure that's even the right way to do this? Like, are you sure that you couldn't broaden your approach and learn from other perspectives and then maybe take a better approach? Anyways, needless to say is like, we really had to get to know each other's working styles. And it was only, later on that we realized, holy crap, like our distinct styles are actually extremely complementary. They make for a great co-founder relationship because we bring skill sets that the other person does not bring to the table.
Great. Very good. And
to your question. So old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not around anymore, right?
They're not. So they were a very high-profile education tech company. At the time, it was basically all former Google employees. They were trying to revolutionize. I say that word, but basically, they were trying to reinvent the entire education system from the ground up. Literally, like building software, building hardware. They even had devices in the classroom that would like do heat maps of where the students were rotating to, so they could figure out like where the clusters of activity were. They had physical schools that they were building so that they were lab schools that you could test your own software and hardware, have a very fast feedback loop, it was a really great experience. They had raised $100 million and had a chance to go in, be a product manager. I think it was just a very different experience for me. I had come from more of like a quant/growth background at Kabam. This was a small school. We had like 150 students with the parents. That was kind of the data set. But other than that, it was very much gut intuition based in a way of you kind of have to pair your user research with some intuition around what a product might look like if you're reinventing it altogether. And so it was a very interesting experience for sure. The company unfortunately did not work out, but it was still, I think it was a great attempt at doing something and maybe just bit off a little bit more than it could chew.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think about the education, system, and basically now that we are all in our early mid 30s and eventually thinking about having a family and wanting to, how are you going to educate your kid, right? And you realize that. I remember the day I was like, oh my god, like I only see my future kids maybe 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. Like you don't really spend that much time as usually, right? At least in terms of like how I'm thinking about structuring my life. But then how come you're going to outsource the education of your kids to all these other people? So you need to like vet them out in order to make sure the values and principles are aligned with what you as the parent think it's best.
Totally.
And then you start researching homeschooling and just this whole thing, because very few people know, right? But the suicide rates of like kids in Palo Alto High, it's insane, because you got all these mentally disturbed tech parents that make their kids compete against each other because they make so much money. That's like, oh, do you have the new, I don't know, iPhone this or whatever. It's just a different dynamic with a lot of ego and wealth embedded in this micro reality bubblish like scenario that we live in, in the Bay Area or other affluent parts of the world. But when you the best things in life you can put, money doesn't solve, right?
It doesn't.
So when you think about I've been really thinking about this whole thing. Ultimately, in a perfect world, we all have kids at the same time.
Oh, and
then we set up a citadel to educate our kids.
It's a great idea. We hire like one teacher to cover, a smaller student teacher ratio, and we all vet them. I mean, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. What would be the curriculum for something like that? I think maybe like nutrition, accounting, sales, writing, math. Science,
maybe stoicism,
music, philosophy, sports.
Music, philosophy, yeah. It's like a return to the olden days, in the castles when you had like a philosopher was a private tutor.
Yes. Also, be interesting to just have like survival class, because I think
that would be amazing.
Just like all generations just way too soft and like so just like, hey, we're all just gonna be out in the woods, no food, no nothing. So
figure out how to come back.
Yes, basically, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts meets Rambo. Like that would be an interesting program that I would love to put my kids through.
Every parent has to sign a disclaimer, like, "Hey, your child may not make it out of the woods, but that's just the the Sparta."
Yes, on your Sweet 16, you will assemble and disassemble and assemble a Kalashnikov, like they do it in Russia. Anyway,
welcome to Pedro and Kevin's hardcore school for children. It's not even the graduation rate; it's survival rate. So we have a survival rate.
I love it. You know that this isn't that, because if you think about it, with all the crypto community has been doing, which is, I mean, usually it's like the weirdos, right? The super weird crypto people like are thinking about that. But like, imagine if you could have something like that for good. I'm not going to name names for the privacy of that individual in particular, but is an investor that became a self-made billionaire, very low profile, from one of the top firms, and he used to live in Palo Alto, moved to Utah, but tried to open up a school in Palo Alto. I mean, the dynamics of working with the municipality of Palo Alto are horrible. Wow. I mean, if you want to think about the number one place where it's like not in my backyard attitude, at least on the West Coast, probably that's one of the top places. So it's a beautiful city, but I think that it's a very unpractical when it comes to have a good sense of, community, that ultimately we're all just, monkeys here doing our best. But let's talk about how we met, right? Like, let's just jump into that. So then we met when I was at FundersClub, and we were then expanding the investment team. So I remember we met at it was the first tiny little darkish like a conference room for that office that we had in Dogpatch.
Oh yeah,
right?
It was great. Pedro and I met during the interview process at FundersClub. I think you might have been my third interview, possibly, or fourth. So it was Alex, Boris, Jared, and then you. We were sitting in this small room, and I think Pedro, I forgot what you asked me, something around like, basically it was like, what would you do? Like, what would it take if you had to like win a deal or something like that? And I just gave some answer that was very just like, basically like break down a door. And I think Pedro and I have very similar mentalities. Perhaps like, I think I actually learned a lot from Pedro. Pedro is even more of like I will break down your door and show up with a machete and, break whatever it takes kind of thing. And I learned so much from that.
Or flowers.
Oh, flowers, just kidding. Cupcakes. It's actually what really happened is cupcakes. Amazing story for another time. But no, it was a great first experience because, we went through the interview process and then we actually did a happy hour afterwards with the company. And perhaps it was just like a weekly happy hour, probably a way for the entire team to vet me as well. But I remember talking to Pedro and I said, "Oh, what are you doing after this?" And he said, "I'm going to a dinner. I'm going to meet some founders." And I said, "Wow, like it's after work, it's after the happy hour. We've all been drinking and you're ready to go to work right after this." And I think Pedro really set the tone for me where I was excited to get into an environment where the people around me pushed me and I pushed them back, right? I think we hold each other to a higher standard. Even now at Immi, we call that like culture accretive, right? You need someone who's culture accretive who raises the bar for everyone around them. And I think that's what Pedro did for me, and hopefully I did for him. And of course, the rest of the venture team, we did for each other. So I was very, very glad to have been and lucky to have been a part of that environment.
Well, thank you first for those kind words, and second, the feeling here is mutual, and in a sense that we really had some very special moments on that venture team, and the one thing I appreciate the most when you're talking about things that set the tone is how well we collaborated as peers, right?
Yes.
Because oftentimes you will see that associates in venture firms in the Bay Area or everywhere, they want to destroy each other because the politics within these firms are horrible to the degree that, how many times have we heard that people, let's say, it's a team of associates at firm X and they got a list of all the companies that are in the Y Combinator batch, and they didn't even had the calls, but to add all of those leads as, companies under their name and so forth. And
exactly,
I think we found there were many moments where we could have taken, I think self-destructive actions or mutually destructive choices, and we decided to actually collaborate and through that be stronger. And funny enough, we didn't have any management incentive for that.
No.
It was because we just liked each other and respected each other. I think that
exactly.
That whole setting the tone, and even to the point that you made before on like the Stanford lab, and and meeting the people you don't want to look up or down. It's a peer relationship.
Exactly.
It definitely was. That was the tone that you set for sure.
Yeah. I agree, man, 100%. It was we had a great relationship, man. That's all I could say. Like so many, like you said, so many opportunities where we chose to give the benefit of the doubt to each other despite not knowing each other and not perhaps even having just like years of foundation of trust. We kind of said, look, we're going to just establish that, and it worked out beautifully, right? It's kind of like a prisoner's dilemma, where it's like, yeah, you could potentially screw the other person, but if you give them the benefit of the doubt first and they respond in kind, then what happens is like you have a beautiful relationship going forward.
Yes. Even to the point that for those listening that don't know, I cannot remember how many times, but less than a handful in my entire life where I cried on the phone with another person, and I have cried on the phone with Kevin, and then
it was mutual, yes.
and then it was just, but I think because we just developed this like bond of like trust and self-respect that I don't have that with many people, and
same, yeah.
I'm just so grateful. So,
me too, man.
Yes. So you also started would you call product manager AQ a side hustle or a main? Like, what was the thesis behind that? And it's interesting because you were years ahead of other people. Meaning that today everyone has something. Even to a degree, this podcast is something like that. Although I don't it's not the purpose is not to monetize it. But you did this. Why don't you tell us what is Product Manager HQ and how did that come about and what's happening there? And
sure, I think so back in 2012 when I was still working at the investment bank, I was starting to get really interested through that year and learning more about product management. And when I was doing my own research, all the resources were just like individual answers on Quora. It was people's individual blogs. there was no central resource to learn about product management. And, for investment banking, for example, when you interview and you recruit, there are two main websites that everyone used to go to. One was called Wall Street Oasis. It was a forum where people would just like a community forum for banking. And then there was one called Mergers and Inquisitions, I think, which was
a great name.
It was like exactly. It was like a blog / they sold courses. And so I always wondered, well, why isn't there just a central resource that combines both? And at the time I was fascinated with product management. So I started with a simple blog, just kind of writing down things that I had learned in my journey, whether that was how to answer an interview question, how to perform on the job.
Yes.
And then it kind of evolved into...
Sorry to cut you off. It's capturing Josie's typing. The mic is, if you want to move or if you, I apologize.
I don't know if, I'll, here.
Sorry about that.
Let me see. Okay.
I think we're fine.
Josie, by the way, congratulations.
Pedro said congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Pedro.
You're a very lucky woman. You can tell her that I said that.
Yeah, he said you're. Wait, said she's a very lucky woman.
Yes. 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 Kevin, you already know he's lucky.
Yeah, I am very.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. What were we talking about?
Sorry about that. It's just that because since it's long format, the quality of the audio needs to be great.
Totally.
And people like you drop out. We've been seeing that in the data, but yeah.
Totally understand. So Product Manager HQ, so it started as a blog, then it evolved into a weekly newsletter, then a community. At the time, Slack was very new, so we used Slack, and now has courses. And so, it started really as, you could call it a side hustle. It was actually, for me, I've always grown up learning the best when I have to teach it to someone else. It's Feynman's technique at the finest, but really it was a childhood practice my dad instilled in me, where every night before a test at school, he made me teach him the entire material. And in hindsight, I realized he probably didn't know anything that I was talking about. I mean, it wasn't like he was, English wasn't his first language either. And I think he just wanted to know that I knew it, and he could ask dumb questions and I would have to be able to answer them. And if I didn't know it, then I had to go back to the drawing board. So, writing for PMHP was a way for me to also solidify my learning and also just be able to share it with people who, were coming up in the same way that I did. So I really like to, understand an opaque industry, break it down in the way I know best, and then kind of disseminate that information to other people who need it.
That's great. Yeah. If you ever want to become a product manager or think about starting a career as a PM, what Kevin's website and community is by far the #1 resource in the world for that. Not just in numbers, but the quality of the content. So yeah, definitely check it out if you're listening and want to be a PM. Okay, so then I left FundersClub. You left FundersClub about 6 months after, and you were still. Both of us continued in venture at that time. I started ONEVC, and then you went to Pear, which has one of the most fascinating stories, right, in the Valley, because Pagemons did, you used to be called
a drug store.
No, before Pear, it was
Pagemons.
What was the name?
Pagemons Ventures.
Yes, it was like both of their names, and they have backgrounds that are very unusual for your typical VC, which I think it's what makes them the best. The best, if you look at the most interesting Midas list people, none of them have a traditional background, and Chris Sacca has a really weird story, and Pagemons and Mar. Hopefully one day I'll be successful. Zucker's mind is also weird. My mind is also weird. But why don't you talk a little bit about the story of Pagemons Mar Ventures, now Pear VC, and then your tenure there, and
definitely
how was that as a firm?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating story. As Pedro said, so Pagemons started his. He escaped Iran, came here, and was homeless. He basically just try to get any job he could while learning English. And so he started working at a yogurt shop. He basically cold called this rug store selling Persian rugs, and the owner actually turned him away, and he said, "Look, how can you not give a chance to someone, before even meeting them in person?" And so Pagemon went and basically sold the guy and got a job selling rugs as a rug store salesman. And for close to 20 years, he was, in Palo Alto, Medallion Rug Gallery, just selling Persian rugs. And it's a beautiful story. The store is still there today, although I've walked by and the people there, they don't hustle. They're just not the same without his DNA there. But yeah, Pagemon,
How much is a Persian rug?
Oh, they can be expensive. I mean, you could talk about
$25K.
Exactly, like 5 figures. I'm sure some are 6 figures. It's not you don't just walk in the store and make a purchase. Some people might, but for Pagemon, he had to build long-term relationships with people. So oftentimes he would drive a van, bring 5 to 10 rugs, and he would just put a rug in someone's home. And he'd say, "Look, I'm not going to charge you. Keep it for a month. Keep it for a few weeks. I'll come back, and then I'll see how you like it." He was probably the first version of give something for free, and then build a relationship over time, deliver value. And then, he would drive to their homes. He would, have tea. He would get to know their families, build a really strong relationship with them. And a lot of times they would say, "Look, just keep the rug. I'll buy it from you." And what's fascinating is because he was doing this in Silicon Valley, he was selling rugs to all these famous CEOs, these famous venture capitalists. He was selling to the Sequoia partners, and he started to bring both the founders and the VCs to the rug gallery, and he would host events and matchmake them. And at a certain point, he realized, gosh, I got to get into the investing world. And so he convinced the rug store owner to start a venture fund and he had to buy into the fund, but he didn't have any money. So the rug store owner said, "I'm going to take it out of your commission. That's how you're going to buy in." And so Pagemon that year went out and he sold, I think, $8 million worth of rugs so that he could get the commission to buy into that fund. And, through that experience, in angel investing, he became the first angel investor in Dropbox, in Lending Club. He has a couple unicorns under his belt. And it all started from being a rug store salesman.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So, you can read a lot about this online, but that Dropbox story is amazing because, he met the Dropbox founders. He immediately brought them to I forgot if it was Michael Morris or Doug Leone over at Sequoia.
I think it was Morris, but it happened on a Sunday, right? It was a weekend.
Yeah,
right?
It was a weekend. The Sequoia partners went to the Dropbox founders' apartment. There's a photo of all of them, and they did the investment on the spot that weekend. And that company, that investment made I think $4 billion for Sequoia. So I still remember when I was at Pear and Dropbox had the IPO 10 years later. Each of the Sequoia partners gave Pagemon a call, and he actually has a custom jacket from them that they made for him. And a couple other things happened that I'm not going to talk about, but clearly he has a great relationship with them. And it started from his hustle, his drive to just and also just being a good person, knowing that it's not just about the revenue, it's about building relationships with these people and getting to know them. One thing I've always loved is when founders come to visit at Pear, he doesn't say "Oh, how's the business doing?" He invites them. He's like, "Hey, come out back," and he already has tea laid out on this back terrace. And he's, Josh Reeves, CEO of Gusto, came by, and he's like, "Josh, how's your family? How's your mom and dad doing?" He knows their families, and it's a beautiful thing to see. So Mara Hershenson, equally amazing story. She actually was an immigrant from Spain, had a PhD in electrical engineering, became a professor at Stanford, was teaching there for many years. And then Pagemon kind of found her and said, "Look, we're polar opposites." Pagemon didn't even go to university. He was a soccer journalist, and he said, "Mar,
Pagemon was also a journalist. That's nice. I didn't know that." Okay,
you got it. Yeah,
one.
it's amazing story. He loves soccer, and so Mar had So Mar was a professor at Stanford, but she actually started 3 companies too. And so Pagemon had actually invested in her company, invested in her husband's company, and that's how they got to know each other. And so they started Pagemon Ventures just to get to know each other, to invest, and it later on rebranded to Pear Ventures, which really is just it's the beginning letters of Pagemon and last name letters of Mar, and that's how you get Pear Ventures. So
wonderful. I think that they represent, knowing them personally, having co-invested with them a few times. It's just the vibe of that demo day that Pear organizes is phenomenal. It's just like that you are in an environment, like you said, with good people.
Yes.
And that's not always the case in venture. And frankly, I think that when you talk about Sequoia, for instance, and you study the story behind some of the things that Don Valentine did for 20 years, so he would then prepare Moritz and Leon to run the firm after, you realize that a lot of the business of venture and startup building, or ultimately anything that you wanted to work in life, is about being a good person and having the right set of principles and values that you care more than others at a personal level.
Definitely.
So, that's the important thing. I think as an investor, I want to be the first phone call on the apocalypse, but I also want to be the first phone call when we celebrate the wins. Everything in between, no problem. I suspect you're competent enough to figure it out.
A lot of people may not know this about Pedro, but for a lot of his friends, including myself, we joke about this a lot. But like Jeff Bezos, has always said something. I actually maybe not use Jeff Bezos' example anymore because him and Bill Gates are no longer together. But if I were ever trapped in a third world country prison, I would call Pedro to come break me out. And I've not heard this just from myself, from a few other people. So this is clearly like a lot of people believe in Pedro. It's a.
Thank you. If you ever need, you just give me a call. No problem. We'll negotiate. It doesn't matter if it's ISIS or like North Korea. There's always a way. Anyway, so how was the moment where you were like, all right, I'm going to transition. I will get out of the dark force, I guess, from investing. I want to be a founder again. And then out of everything you could do, because you have a great knowledge in gaming, great knowledge in customer acquisition, product management, then venture. So why food, and then of course why ramen?
So food is a very interesting. A lot of people, when I first made that transition, including my own family.
Maybe for those who don't know, sorry to interrupt. What is Immi, right? Like summarize. What's your company, and then we'll go from there.
So Immi is a better for you Asian American food brand. Our first product is the world's first low carb, high protein instant ramen. It's the first of its kind, has never existed. So we are trying to invent, pretty much a new category of food. Immi. So the reason I wanted to move into the food industry, there's a couple of reasons. So one is, I think around my mid-20s, my body really started to break down in ways I had never truly understood. In my early 20s, I was kind of like, my mind is my software, and the software is unbounded. It's limitless. So I just want to invest in my mind. And I didn't really take good care of my body. And what I failed to recognize was, if your body is really your hardware, you have to upgrade your hardware in order to allow your mind to flourish. And so, my knees were breaking down. I had run this, a friend invited me to do this Ragnar relay, which is you and 12 people run from here to Napa, about 200 miles. And I didn't prepare for it. I just said, oh, look, I'm young, I can do this. And I destroyed my knees. I couldn't run on concrete for the next 3 years. I was getting mild carpal tunnel in both my hands, where I could not type for longer than maybe a couple hours a day. I had to wear a hand brace on both arms. And then also around that time was when in my own family, my grandmother, she's been pre-diabetic for many years, but she had a stroke because of hypertension that left her half paralyzed, half blind. My mom developed, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and all of these things just hit all at once. It was all health related. And it makes sense because I was getting older, my family was getting older, and I just didn't realize that, health was such a priority. So I really started to reevaluate all of my health habits, from my diet to the way I was sleeping, to my stress levels. And I think that was definitely like a big personal motivator into wanting to get into this industry. The other thing is, My family history is in food. My grandmother, actually both my grandparents, they're produce farmers in Taiwan. So they grow something called a rose apple. And during my childhood, I spent a lot of time with them in the fields, picking, stemming, packaging the fruit. So I had some exposure to it, but I never thought of it as a serious industry that I would work in. I think what few people fail to realize is that in the past, maybe past half decade here in America, and probably this past decade, the entire food industry has completely evolved, where it used to be the food conglomerates like the Kraft Heinz's of the world kind of dominated the groceries. But as health habits have changed, a lot of these large food conglomerates, they don't have the right incentive structures to be able to adapt. Because if you are the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar food conglomerate, you've been selling the same processed foods to America, and America has bought, right? Middle America has bought from you. If you try to reinvent the wheel and invent a healthier line, your sales are going to drop in the short term for sure. And so what happens when you're a public company, you're a food conglomerate, and your sales drop? Well, the board fires you. That's what happens in public companies. So the incentive structure is broken, where they cannot innovate. Their only choice is to buy companies. And so if you are a fledgling startup food brand and you carve out, like $100 million segment, a $200 million segment, this is still chump change to these food conglomerates, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the speed to compete against you. And
Yes. But I think how much ramen is sold every year?
So it's a $42 billion, it's actually a $46 billion industry now, sold globally. It's a massive industry. A lot of people don't really think about this. And partially it's because most of that market really is in Asia, where this food, it originated in Japan back, post-World War II, because people were starving. There was not enough food. And so this guy, Momofuku Ando, was like, how do I invent a food that can feed a lot of the population really quickly? And that's how instant ramen was created. But, it hasn't evolved in the past 50 to 60 years. I think to a certain extent, food, hunger it's kind of been solved. I would say it's more of a distribution issue now. I guess critics can argue there, but I think we've kind of, especially in America, if you're not food insecure, we've really, now I think the focus is more on nourishment, right? It's like, can we fill our stomachs with nourishing food versus just trying to fill it with any kind of food, period?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think what happens in America per se is criminal to the degree that they are poisoning us unless you have consciousness. I mean, do you know that I like to do these like custom libraries, right? Or for like every founder that I partner with, and I think did I give you Good Nutrition? Did I give you that book?
Deep Nutrition, yes.
Yes,
you gave me two actually.
True, yes, exactly. Because when I learned about what seed oils do to you, I was shocked. And then try to not eat canola oil. It's not easy. It's everywhere. Even in, like, I remember I like these sugar-free Mentos gum, and I always had it in my car. Why do you have canola oil in gum? I don't understand why. But then you go to Whole Foods even, or other allegedly healthy places, and you got to read every label. Because it's just really tough to find good products. For instance, I think Oatly, recent like food. I mean, that thing is poison. I mean, it's a great story with a logo and beautiful brand, and a bunch of people made a lot of money. And congratulations for them. But you read the ingredients, there are a bunch of preservatives. It's it's the same thing with fake meat. It's the same thing with all these other products that I think just good nutrition is so hard. Because we are fooled, and there are so many little double whammies, right? Because sure, I mean, not a lot of people understand, but still high fructose, right? Like corn syrup and all the seed oils. I mean, I had this big conversation with my parents. I was like,
"Yes,
would you like cancer?" It was a very simple conversation, and then because you don't read the labels, but even here. Like let's say you want a little chicken cranberry salad in Whole Foods, and it has the dressing with the the things or tuna. So they will have some sort of mayonnaise that will have canola oil. So it's just really tough. And I know you when you really try to eradicate it from your body, and you go to a restaurant and you have it,
your body
Yeah.
feels really weird after. I'm always like either like lethargic or the next day, you know, I'm farting all the time and I'm like, what the fuck did I put in my system? Food's complicated. And then with the keto paleo stuff, then I think that people are missing the point in many ways. You could go to the vegan section of a supermarket and you're going to buy vegan bacon? No. Just, you know, make a kick-ass eggplant or, you know, a recipe that makes sense. Don't try to reproduce meat. That will never work. Right? It's awkward. Or like, yeah, let's do keto brownies or this or no, just, you know, you eat an occasional donut or brownie, but don't try to rip, because you see my point. There's this paradox of trying to like, so I actually, this is a good point, because when we talk about ramen, right, it's delicious, but oftentimes unhealthy. So, I mean, it's a tough mission to reinvent a category and make it amazing and healthy for you. So how, where do you start?
Yeah, it was my co-founder and I don't have any kind of culinary background, food science background ourselves, apart from appreciating the industry. You know, we started like anyone else, which is you go on YouTube and you quite literally type in how to make noodles. So we did first party research, right? If you try to think from first principles, it's what are you going to do, right? You're probably going to just figure out how to make any kind of pasta noodle to start. So we bought like pasta rollers, we watched YouTube videos, we read research reports, read books, we talked to experts, you know, we translated Japanese and Chinese research papers using Google Translate, and we would just follow the steps.
Wow.
So we made close to, I think, 100 iterations in our own kitchen. We ended up hitting this like local maximum of our food science knowledge, and we had to reach out to a food science PhD and a chef, and we said, look, this is as far as we've gone. We'd love to get your advice on where we can go from here. We definitely, in the beginning, considered asking a food scientist to just, you know, work with us and do this. And the funny thing is, just a lot of the noodle food scientists at the time, because they had never seen a low carb, high protein noodle with the kind of macros we were looking for, they just said this is impossible, right? Like they said, food science is pretty well studied. You know, if this was invented, it should have been invented by now. And so they didn't want to work with us. And at that point, you have no choice but to just do it yourself. And I think, like most problem solving, it's funny because, again, me and Kei-Chen took very different approaches where, you know, I went and I found the food science PhD, the chef advisors. He kind of holed up and he looked at the research, you know, and watched the videos. And we both combined a lot of that to create our initial formulations. I think there's a couple things that are important for any kind of problem solving. One is you want to improve your throughput. And what that means is we were able to create, let's say, 2 formulations a day when we were getting started, because it takes time to run through the formulation. The one thing that the food science PhD did for us is he kind of examined our process and he said, your experimentation process is too slow. Here's the things that I would improve about this, and that will improve your throughput, where instead of 2 experiments a day, you're running 5 to 6 experiments a day.
Wow. I would not expect that specifically for food. Like, seems like trying 2 recipes a day, you know, for a month, that's 60 different variations if you don't stop over the weekend. And he said that wasn't enough, huh? Interesting.
He said it wasn't enough. He also said that there were flaws in our current experimentation process where, you know, maybe like we were introducing too many new variables at a time, or we tried to add too many ingredients to the ingredient label at the same time, and we couldn't isolate, you know, what was affecting the taste, the function, so on and so forth. So it was really the process that he improved for us. And
it's
then
like an algorithm, right?
It kind of, yes. It's much simpler, but
yeah.
In a way, yes.
No. I mean, because how many variables you would have within the ramen, right? Or the Immi ramen has how many ingredients, and, you know, the quantities of each ingredients would affect the whole thing, right?
Totally. The chef advisor, what he did was he gave us more variables to play with, is the simplest form, which basically just means he gave us an entire encyclopedia of ingredient knowledge that we didn't know before. So before, we were just buying ingredients off of Amazon, Bob's Red Mill, you know, like any any supply we could find, any protein we could find, we just bought it. And the chef advisor said, well, did you know that if you call up these ingredient supply giants and you tell them you're a food company, they will ship you free samples of any ingredient you ask for. And we didn't know that we could do this. We thought, we're going to have to buy so much product. And so all of a sudden we had, 3 to 4 times more ingredients to play with. And we had all these samples. So my kitchen was a nightmare. My fiance Josie was so pissed because it was full of all this shit that some of the stuff we didn't even end up using, but it was like a lab here basically.
By the way, congratulations on being on track to the most important decision in your life. I love both of you guys. Josie is such an amazing. I'm so happy that you proposed recently. So that's great. And this is a very patient woman because I've been to your kitchen many times, and it was going through this crazy lab, as in like this Frankenstein setup.
It was nuts. Yeah. I'm glad she was patient enough to deal with that.
Yes, but I have a friend. I'm so sorry. Just as like a little parenthesis, but he'll be on the podcast at some point. Philippe Lamonier, and he's a founder of Startsy, and he's like, you know what? I realized that and he's about to get married as well. He proposed recently, and he said, I realized I was with the right woman when we were together on our knees in a 1-bedroom apartment that we were converting into 2 different apartments in the Tenderloin, right when we had just moved from Brazil to make to try to make it in Silicon Valley. So you want a woman that will put build a little dry wall so you both save money in the beginning of your journeys, or a woman that will that can be okay with your mess in your kitchen, like Josie.
It's you got to go through a hardship together. I think that's really the only. Sorry, it's not the only way to know. It will accelerate the relationship. Is to go through the hardship together.
Yes.
Like anything in life, coworkers, friends.
That's right. But going back to ramen validation, so over 200 recipes, right, and multiple variables. You understand you can ship the samples from the manufacturers.
I think the other thing too that was important is we weren't just holding up, build, launch 2 years later. Along the way, we were validating demand. So, what that means is before we even touched formulation, we had a landing page, we had a mock-up design, we were collecting pre-orders, we were running ad tests to ensure that there was a high conversion rate. And that people were actually interested in this kind of product. And once we had validated that demand was when we were comfortable building the product. So I think that's important for any founder listening is, not only did we validate demand, we also built a community while we were doing R&D. So we had a Facebook community, private beta group with, close to 3,800 people before we even launched. And we also had a wait list of 35,000 people on our wait list. And this was important because you have to do this while you are parallel tracking R&D or development. And it's just a good way to get a feedback loop on your product as well. Now, there's some instances where this doesn't work. Maybe there's some deep tech where you have to be a little bit more stealth about this. But for us, we knew we wanted to launch with a strong community and also ensure that what we were building was the right thing. Because a lot of times as founders, you get in your own head, you think that, your product needs this value prop or this value prop. But if you have a community that you can talk to, you'll quickly realize that people don't care about it, right? So in the beginning, we thought, we must be gluten-free because that's where, maybe a lot of people care about it. Once we started surveying the community and doing the ad test, we realized it's a very small population. Maybe less than 5% actually listed that as a priority for them. And so that could have avoided, another year of R&D. And I would recommend this to any founder.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, you guys did a tremendous amount of work and just so active every day on that community, watching you build that from the ground up was really cool. Ramen also is such an interesting product because it has these passionate, almost, obsessed like people that just love I mean, like you and then all of your customers, right? Basically, because it's such a ritualistic food, right? For me, So, I was looking at the Anchor data for the podcast. So about 70% of the listeners are in Brazil. And in Brazil, ramen is called miojo, which is typically, it would be the miojo, yeah. And then it's seen as the college-y, whole thing.
Yeah.
I think we're beginning in the bigger cities, mostly Sao Paulo, of actually having, because some of the others, they're just too hot, I think, to have a big ramen culture in Rio.
Yeah.
Or on the northeast of Brazil, but in San Francisco, I lived in front of Sanraku not Sanraku. What's the name of that ramen place that I lived right in front of? You remember on Gary Street? Oh my God!
Yeah, we used to wait in heavy lines. I haven't been there in a year, maybe 2 years now.
As I would say the number one, number two ramen places in SF at that time. Wow, no, I just completely.
We'll find it later.
Yeah, but
you want me to look it up?
Yeah,
it was Mensho, right? Was it
Mensho? Yes, Mensho.
That was
ramen.
it. Yeah.
There you go. Yes, and I could see the lines. He just would not open on Mondays. Every other day, it was just massive lines, and the product, it was remarkable. I mean, it was almost. There are a few foods that I think will take you to another place, and that specific ramen bowl, and you see how they do it, and they warm up the bowl and the broth, and everything is calculated to perfection. So it's interesting, and the food itself, right? Like eating ramen is interesting as well because it has almost this metaphor for life, as if Heraclitus, that Greek philosopher, that talks about, that the same point in the river is never the same point because the water continues to flow. I feel like eating a bowl of ramen is also like this metaphor of life.
That's beautiful, man.
Because it changes all the time.
Wow. I love this. Never thought that those would be compared. Oh man. I think you're absolutely correct. For me, what's amazing is the ramen bowl is just it's a perfect foundation and base, right? It's it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. You could start with the broth, with the noodles, and then people will add their own toppings, right? It's fascinating because we have customers all across the U.S. of all ethnicities, and we have people from Scotland who come to the U.S. They bought Immi, and their toppings are so fascinating. They'll put potatoes and corned beef. It's not something that I would ever try as a topping, but now I'm intrigued because it's an amalgamation of their entire upbringing and their experiences that they then decide to use, and they use the ramen as the base. And so, fundamentally, instant ramen was invented it was like a medium by which that, we fed people, quickly and conveniently, at mass scale. And now I feel so lucky to be able to work with Keichen to improve that, to pay homage to the traditional instant ramen, but upgrade it and up-level it and make this ramen 2.0 that has better nutritional benefits and that people can still use as a way to feed themselves, but with better nutrition.
Tons of protein. How many grams per serving you guys have?
So version 1, which is out now, it has been out, it's 9 grams of net carbs, 31 grams of protein, and 9 grams of fiber. What we're actually doing for version 2 is way better from a taste, texture perspective. We've dropped the net carbs down to 5 to 6 grams, just depends on the flavor. And then the protein we've dropped to 22 grams, so it's still a good amount. And then fiber we've increased to 15 grams. I think that the average American just does not consume enough fiber. So we've really improved the macros in certain ways. And we're very excited about the version 2 coming out in mid-August.
Awesome. I'm excited to try it. I know it's coming.
So, one's already on your way. So.
Exactly. I am pumped for that. So talking more about just you as a founder, and I think you were one of the founders that I learned the most with, in terms of just the setup that you have. I think we're both super maniacal on. We have our own methodologies, but just productivity, being aware of your time, how you do things, and you started doing blocking Wednesdays and Fridays only for external calls, and the rest for deep work. How was the the decision making around that, and how has that been like impacting you so far?
Yeah, I think when I started this founder journey, I realized that taking too many external calls throughout the week was definitely not allowing me to do any kind of deep work, where, sometimes you just need a full day to do some, a lot of thinking, a lot of writing, and to be able to crank out the tasks that you need to do. And bucketing everything just puts me in the right mental state where Fridays I know, I'm going to do calls all day, and that's perfect. I'm not stressed thinking about something else. My co-founder knows that this is the day that, I'm going to do all my calls, and it's where I'm like in flow because I'm not context switching so much. I think separate from scheduling, the one thing that really changed the way I work is, my Notion dashboard is a combination of the Eisenhower matrix and the one thing, which is simply just do one thing at a time. It's nothing nothing groundbreaking, but the
For those
Eisenhower
that
matrix.
don't know, let's talk about that because that's great. That's a great productivity hack.
Yeah, it's
Not
a
hack,
simple
framework.
Yeah, it's a simple 2x2 quadrant where you have important and urgent, or not important and urgent, so on and so forth. It's a good way. At least for myself, I've kind of evolved my task management system over the years. I found that it helps me prioritize, what is something urgent but not important. And, if that's the case, then can I delegate it, right? Or if it's urgent and important, then maybe it's something I need to focus on right now. And what I do is for every task within any of these quadrants, I also assign a dollar per hour. So it's 10, 100, 1,000, or 10,000. And that, because in every quadrant, you're going to have multiple to-dos, but how do you prioritize those to-dos within that quadrant? You can either do it by due date, or you can do it by like a mental framework of like, what's the higher priority? Or you can do it by a dollar per hour. So like, is this $10,000 per hour work? And if it's not, then you should be questioning why you're spending your time doing that. Or if you look at your to-do list at the end of the week and you say, wait, I did 10 $10 per hour items and 0 $10,000 per hour items. Does that mean that I need to hire a virtual assistant to help me take care of all these $10 per hour items? So I think it really helps you frame, am I working on the right thing at the right time? It's about leverage, right? Because as a founder, you have to leverage your time as much as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, as we both know, I think Naval summarized that really well in terms of the types of problems that one should solve versus the ones that you shouldn't, and just outsource your time. And I like when he uses the example of just returning something or going to a store to like get something, and the cost per hour plus the time, actually, right? And Bezos talked about that when he was saying, hey, we're actually saving our customers X amount of hours. So even if you're buying, I don't know, this morning I bought Q-tips on Amazon, and I don't know if they were more expensive than the ones in the supermarket. Even if they were by 50 cents, it's okay, because I just did it in, I don't know, 10 seconds. But so that, I think it's just so important that founders usually have to understand that the most important asset is time. And then how do you ultimately build leverage on your time? One of our previous guests, Rafael from Sanchez from Anycart, he was thinking about how, he was then hiring someone to run product for the company. He's a product guy. He's a very heavy product fan. Ultimately, like it's his baby and he will be making all the decisions. So we were having dinner at his house in Palo Alto, and we talked about great advice that I think it was the managing partner at Techstars Seattle. And he told me, he's like, you don't need an actual PM that will then bring all the, luminary-like decisions for product. Like, you are that person. You want someone that can help you make more decisions in a day. So they will filter out and build things up for you, and they'll just bring it to you when you do rapid decision making. So that's leverage, right? So I think it's one example, but
definitely.
If you had to think about what were some of the things you've done in your life that you think brought leverage? Could be even a small thing, but
Yeah, I think starting PMH Product Manager HQ was one of the simplest forms, where I wrote and the writing was read by people now more than 1 million people in
Wow.
community as well.
That's amazing, man. Congrats. Over
Thanks.
1
Yeah,
million. That's great.
Yeah, we've sent out, I think, 6 million emails. It's been crazy to see the reception around the world and that community as well. I mean, it's such high leverage because when you start a community, people naturally gravitate towards you. And I had a chance to meet some of these product leaders that I never should have been in the same room with, right? I got to meet like the CEO of Airtable, Ken Norton, who's a famous product leader who's been at Google for many years. Just again, amazing founders, CEOs that I would never have an opportunity to speak with. So I'm very grateful for that. Even, starting Immi, the leverage you get as a startup founder. Yes, you're not making money, right? You're kind of sacrificing a lot in the short term there, but you get to meet so many interesting people who are, you treat as peers. And, I can't talk about some of these people, but until later this year, but I had a chance to meet some of these people that I've always kind of really, again, like looked up to in a way. And that never would have happened without starting a company.
Yeah. I think it goes back again to the whole idea of you get that reward when you add more value than what you can capture to the world and you're a good person. And this, it came up during our conversation many times. It's basically, it's Pagemon being thoughtful when he's selling a rug, right? It's just building a relationship. It's, you teaching someone about because like if you really want to, instead of reading the book, if you try to write the book, you will learn, 100 times fold. So it's just, and maybe the equivalent of what Pagemon did with rugs relationships, in my opinion, it's what, Harry Stebbins did with his podcast. For those who don't know, this is the guy that runs the 20-minute VC, but he started when he was 17, 4 years ago. I remember when I met him and he couldn't order a drink in San Francisco.
Crazy.
And massive work ethics, but then, suddenly he's condensing all that knowledge for people and then he's adding more value than what he can capture and, then he gets rewarded.
It's amazing.
As it should be. So one thing that you always said that as we start wrapping up, said that one of your duties as a founder is to also grow and outsource your role as fast as possible. What do you mean by that? And how do you see your role changing over the course of the next few years in Immi?
Yeah, I think it also comes down to leverage, right? It's a lot of times as founders, it's easy to want to fill your schedule with busy work. Because it feels good. It's kind of like you get an adrenaline rush, you get that dopamine hit when you're doing this $10 per hour work. Whether that's like, maybe I'm personally responding to each customer support ticket. I think in the early days, it's important to go through that. Especially you want to maintain that close connection with your customer. But over time, if you are still the one reviewing, each and every single social media post, reviewing copy on certain things, it's a drain of time and you're not building leverage. And so every CEO that I've met has been in this continuous journey to find the best talent, build the best team, get smarter people than them around them, and let those people, trust those people to make decisions. And, I think good co-founders, like one co-founder is good at gathering new resources for the organization, and the other co-founder should be good at maximizing resources that already exist within the organization. And that's kind of the mentality I take, where my job right now as CEO is, can I find new resources in the form of capital, in the form of talent, partnerships, influencers, so on and so forth, bring them to the organization and let people smarter than me, maximize the use of those resources.
I think that's a great summary. Ultimately, when we think about what the role of the CEO is to raise money, inspire people, make sure that they're functioning at their best at all levels, and hire, right? Like ultimately,
yes.
If you wanted to summarize in one point, the role of the good CEO is to build leverage. That's what it is from a management standpoint, internally, and then for yourself. So you need to be good at building leverage for yourself to then build leverage for the organization.
Definitely.
That's a good conclusion here. So, as we
wrap up, but I don't know if there are any points that you want to make. I don't know if things you want to talk about.
No, I think my big thing is I just encourage anyone listening is just move as quickly as you can from being a consumer to a creator, right? It doesn't, and what that means is like, you could write, you could create writing, you could create a video, work on a project, but when you learn to create, it really does change your entire attitude, your entire perspective. A lot of people often ask, how is it like jumping from venture to being a founder, or any role to becoming a founder? I think really it's just a mindset shift. Where you kind of realize like, oh, look, yeah, maybe it won't work out. And maybe I don't have the financial resources and I'm really struggling. But if your mindset shifts, then it's hard to look back where, you realize that all the founders, all the entrepreneurs before us, it's not like they were doing anything different or they were any smarter. They just took that leap of faith and they started learning, as they went. Would just encourage. That's why you see in my Twitter, it's like, encouraging others to be creators, because I think that changed my life so much when I made that decision years ago to start creating things.
It's just so important. I mean, it's the only way to freedom is to be an owner of something, and you can start small and continue to scale. And the faster that you realize that, the better. It's just extremely disappointing, the amount of people that ended up being domesticated, thinking that the only solution out is to give their entire lives up to then when they're old, try to like be less sick, I guess, or live with like a little bit of comfort. That's just an unrealistic plan. I wonder though what's going to happen when everyone realizes that. Are we ever going to be able to hire someone?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Just like think about, we're fucked.
We'll all be peers, like working with each other in certain ways, and we'll all have different projects going on. Is what I can imagine.
Yes, it's the ultimate libertarian utopia. Is that everyone is a founder. Then we just align based upon values and principles. That's it.
I like it.
Yeah. So just quick like little rapid fire here. I think for you, I guess we have I just have like a set of like a multiple questions. But the one thing, copying from Tim Ferriss is like, what have you bought recently that like just it's like great that really improves your life? A little thingy, or maybe a gadget, or an object, or.
I bought a near smokeless Korean or a barbecue grill that from Amazon. It was like $100, and it allows me to do these mini barbecues inside the home. And I do Korean barbecue, which is you buy marinated meat and like short rib and bulgogi, and just have been doing little Korean barbecues at home. It's really been amazing because I love Korean barbecue, and now I don't have to go out and pay for it, and I can just do it in my own home.
That's great. When you come to Miami, we'll take you to Q, which is like this baller Korean barbecue place. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we can wrap here. I want to just appreciate you so much, Kevin, by, honestly, for your time and our friendship and everything. And congratulations for being, who you are.
Thank you so much, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, hope all of you guys like this episode. And for those watching on YouTube, basically the Inevitable Podcast is also available on all major podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. You can also watch the highlights of our episodes on the Inevitable Clips channel. Please make sure to subscribe if you've actually were listening all the way until here. Give the thumbs up and all the other things that we can train the algorithms together. We all appreciate that. And if you want to get in touch, I mean, honestly, it's really easy. Both Kevin and I are, I think, pretty public. But Kevin, I don't know if you want to point.
Nope, I think I'm very public. So
yeah, exactly.
Find me on Twitter. Same with Pedro.
Yes. See you guys next week. And Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.